This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Chevy Lynn Vasky with the K-State Radio Network. Starting Friday's show is K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien, who begins the show discussing the futures and cash markets, as well as strong wheat exports. K-State agronomy assistant Nick Detter and PhD student Ceasar Guareschi continue the show as they discuss the upcoming Regenerative Agriculture Field Day at Knopf Farms. Ending today's show is K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond, who provides insight on the recent moisture across the state and mentions the fall weather might be sticking around. That and more is coming up ahead on this episode of Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we begin Friday's show with a grain market update from K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. Daniel, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Chevy. Appreciate it.
And Daniel, can you give us a broad overlook of how the market's looking right now?
Well, broadly speaking, we're still in a time of pressure from expectations of sizable crop harvest, more so in probably wheat. Again, we've had that harvest, still prices moving to the low side. We've had some strength here of late in corn, again, in response to what USDA information comes out or not, and probably the most strength actually in the soybean market. And when you look at the corn price, here we closed yesterday with a D's contract at $4.10. Now the September contract is just going. It's coming into its delivery time frame. So we've kind of shifted our attention in terms of following the markets into D's, and then and the carrying charges from D's to March. Then just about 6 cents a month from March to May, about 5 or so, and less there. So I guess I'd say. When you look at the recent trading range for D's corn, we had been as low as about 391, 392, as high as about 417, and we're now at 410. And I try to follow a technical indicator called the relative strength indices index. And if it's at 50, then the prices are going sideways. If it's at 70, they're going up. At 30, they're going down. And the most recent readings of that the last several days are around 50. So given the drastic big fall off that we'd had in prices all the way from especially from June to now, to have prices having stabilized, some to go sideways is a positive. And for soybeans, again, somewhat of a different story for soybeans. We had been down to for November soybeans, down to about $9.80 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now we'd gotten up as high as about 10.62, 10.63, closed yesterday at 10.48. So positiveness some positive trends in the soybean market. Again, that was on yesterday's close, and the carrying charges for beans are amazing. Strong carrying charge from the SEP contract going out September. It's also entering into the delivery time frame from September to November, just under 10 cents a bushel per month. And you think, well, gosh, that's just the delivery time frame. But from November to January, just a little over 9 and 3/8 cents per bushel per month, 7 cents out to March, then out to May, down to 4 and 5/8 cents. So pretty good carry there. In the wheat market, again, and we're watching Kansas City hard red winter wheat. You saw close yesterday for the September contract, also entering into a delivery time frame at 486 3/4. Within D's, the D's contract 515 3/4, and a carrying charge between those two of again almost 10 cents, 9 and 2/3 cents per month. From D's to March at 6 3/4, to May, then to 6 7/8, and the like. So I guess I mentioned the carries because of the likelihood of not all grain being sold at harvest, especially if we continue to have evidence of strong crop size, et cetera. And with that, you'll probably see quite a bit of storage. In our report that we put together this week, we got the we have put together charts on where basis is at for corn, for sorghum, for wheat, and for soybeans. And you really see pretty weak basis. Well, the weakest basis is for sorghum right now, waiting for exports to kick back up with the new harvest year, et cetera. And hopefully China's re-entry into that market. And then also pretty weak basis for wheat and corn in most parts of the state. We do have an exception down in the southeast part of the state for almost all these commodities. We've had coming in the southeast corner of Kansas, pretty strong relative cash prices, I guess, relative to the rest of the state, and just shows up step by step as you look at the areas of the state. So interesting to watch. I think also I've been watching the ethanol plant cash prices in Kansas to see how Kansas ethanol corn bids are, how they compare with other states around the nation. And whereas a year ago, Kansas had, at this time, not wonderful prices, but $3.97 average cash price. That was a year ago. And the next highest state was Nebraska, $3.85. And most other states were at least a dime or so less than that. Here this year, we in Kansas are now at $3.87 and a quarter, and the highest cash bid at ethanol plants is actually in Indiana, Ohio, $3.93, and then and actually that $3.87 that Kansas has, at least as I observe it, is a little bit stronger bid relative to the rest of the nation than we've been of late. So interesting to watch.
You've talked a little bit about cash prices and things like that, but what about the futures market?
Yeah, I think that I guess I just reiterate that the futures market trends are strong corridor moving down for corn, bottomed out, we hope, maybe moving sideways now for wheat, an unrelenting negative trend. Had a bit of relief on, I guess, late May, early June for wheat, but then resumed on this tortured downward path. And most farmers that if they still have wheat to sell, they're bemoaning that same downward trend. It's not helping them any in terms of getting a positive selling price. But and for soybeans, again, had hit a low in late July, early August, and jumped way up, as we talked about, from, again, about 980 up to about 1062, 1063, receded off of that to 1048. So I guess we're standing back right now looking at these markets, and frankly, we're waiting for new USDA data on the size of these crops. We have on September 12th, there'll be another USDA crop production and WASDE report. The USDA NASS will be out in the fields. They'll actually be out in the fields getting their own measurements to go along with what farmers are telling them around September 1st. So that's just days around the corner. In fact, it's probably started right today, Friday, and going on for days around that. And there's been a lot of concern about the size of the U.S. corn crop. That, again, we had this large yield expectation projection coming out of the August. Yes, that's right. The August 12th report showing us that, saying that we had about 188.8 bushels per acre, 16.7 billion bushel size crop size. But then had a crop tour that happened, as the Pro Farmer crop tour happened about a week ago, came back with markedly lower expectations of about 182 bushels per acre. And of course, that you'd still have a tremendous corn crop, but it wouldn't be 16.7. You're closer to something closer to 16. Well, that differential make a big difference on the USDA supply-demand balance sheet for corn, and would impact prices. So I have my own set of numbers calculated that if we just keep everything the same and just change the yield down 184 bushels per acre, again, and asking the question, well, where do we end up? Well, we end up 30 to 40 cents per bushel higher, about three percentage points less for stocks to use. Ending stocks at 2.1 billion down to about 1.7. So, it's a big deal. We'll be watching to see also what happens on beans. Soybeans also had a record high yield forecast by the USDA. I believe it's in essence it was about I think it's 42.5 thereabouts bushels per acre yes, for soybeans, 53.6 bushels per acre, and still a lower figure, but soybeans, frankly, more on the edge of where things could go. I do want to mention that for wheat, we had in this last week, and even with all these with all the other things that we're bemoaning for U.S. wheat, we had a tremendous week of U.S. wheat exports and of hard red winter wheat exports, and probably because of low prices and relatively low U.S. dollar and some problems, dry conditions over in Europe, et cetera. So I guess all is not lost with regard to where markets go. We have the present things we're assuming, but we still have a number of things that we have to iron out in terms of final crop size and where, not just here in the U.S., but across the globe. And on the wheat, it's kind of a conundrum in that, man, we've got great exports flying off of U.S. shores during this time of low prices, and you wonder in the next 30 to 60 to 90 days how that wheat pace will work itself out, and if eventually we'll start to see prices level and move to the higher side.
Daniel, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Just stay tuned for the September 12th report. That's really our next set of solid data that the market will pay attention to. From there, I think it has the potential to be a very volatile day. In fact, if it's anything other than extreme bearishness, it'll be supportive to the market. So we'll see how things work out in a couple weeks as we get more data in hand.
Daniel, thank you again for taking the time to join us today.
Chevy, thank you very much. Take care.
Again, that was Kansas State University grain market economist Daniel O'Brien, who discussed this week's grain market outlook, detailing futures and cash markets, along with hard red winter wheat exports. We are cutting to a short break now, but we'll have more for you up ahead on Friday's show of Agriculture Today. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show with K-State Agronomy Assistant Nick Detter and Ceasar Guareschi, PhD student here at Kansas State University, as they discuss the upcoming field day at Knopf Farms. Thank you both for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
The Kansas State University Agronomy Department is hosting an event on September 11th. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so K-State, our agronomy department, has been doing a partnership with a group of farmers across the state that we call the Kansas Soil Health Network. And we've been doing all this different on-farm research where we look at how different regenerative practices such as cover crops, application of manure, and just different agricultural practices, how that impacts our yields and our farming systems. And so we're just taking a day with one of our farmers, Justin Knopf. He's a K-State alum. He has a farm outside of Salina, where we're going to talk about those results, see what we've learned, and just like introduce farmers to and anyone in the agricultural community in the area to what we've been doing with this group over the last 9 years.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what has been going on over these 9 years?
Yeah, so as Nick emphasized, this is a farmer-led initiative that started in 2018. Currently, we have 6 sites across the whole state of Kansas, where we test regen ag practice on overall soil health and now more extensively on crop yields. So basically we compare farming practice where we have the standard crop rotation from the farmer and our treatment or the improved practice where we add one facet of regen ag. Most of the cases we are introducing cover crops, replacing some fallow periods between 2 cash crops. But depending on the region, and this is one thing that's interesting in this project, that we have a wide range of producing environments. So for you to have an idea, we have farm locations that are just by the Missouri border, and we have one location that's just by the Colorado border. So we have a wide array of environments where farmers, they can test different approaches, thinking on regen ag practice, aiming to have more resilient systems, more sustainable systems that maybe will be yielding more. So it's basically like that. So from these 9 years of projects, we have been measuring soil health attributes and seeing good results so far, and also now trying to understand how is the effect of this practice in crop yield as well.
And what research results are producers expecting to see at this event?
We have an extensive data set of results, some of the locations where we have already, for example, like 7 to 9 years of data. So from the soil side, we have been like extensively collecting soil samples in these locations. And for example, if you take soil organic matter, which is like a great indicator of soil health, it's widely known. We have been tracking the development of like soil organic matter, either accumulation of loss or of soil organic matter over these years. And the treatments where we have cover crops, they revealed that like in these treatments, we are seeing like accumulation of soil organic matter over the years, which is like a positive side of the use of cover crops, for example. Yield-wise, I know that farmers, they crop yields, it matters a lot for them. We are seeing over the years consistent results about like crop yield between the two treatments, meaning that like sometimes and most of the times we don't see differences between the yields in the conventional treatment and the cover crop treatment. Does that mean a bad thing? No. It means that we are producing the same amount of crop yield using cover crops in these locations and also getting the benefit of having a better soil health. These are like results that we are going to be highlighting besides all other soil health indicators that we are assessing and are important to the resilience of soil as well.
And at this event, there's going to be a producer roundtable discussing some opportunities and challenges of using cover crops. Can you guys talk to me a little bit more about what producers can expect at that?
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things with our program and this research we've been doing is that it's on-farm research. We have 7 sites, I believe, across the state of Kansas. And what's really cool about this field day is that you'll get to hear directly from some of those producers that have participated in the research. I mean, while our results are great and, our numbers are really important, I think it can be useful for farmers and those in the ag community to get to hear directly from the farmers that have, firsthand experience with this research. The results capture a lot, but there are, things in your day-to-day experience while implementing new things in these practices and trying new things in your operation that you can't always capture in the numbers. And so you'll get to hear directly from the farmers that have been trying these things out and hear what's gone well, what's been unexpected, what's been new, and just get to see from the farmer perspective what implementing some of these practices has been like.
Yeah, and just going from like Nick's perspective, I think that's important because like one of the main principles of like Regen Ag is to consider context. So they are bringing context-specific situations that may serve to the audience over there. For example, like if you are in the western portion of the state, you're going to have like less rainfall. So maybe some of the practices are not attainable for that situation. Differently from, let's say, the eastern part of the state. So they're bringing their context-specific situations that may fit to the audience that's going to be there and like listening to real-world scenarios where they can apply or not apply some of the practices that we are extensively studying across our soil health network.
And looking into the future, what are your goals with this program?
Yeah, I think one of our hopes is, so this field day is in Gypsum, Kansas, which is in Saline County, just outside of Salina. And with our 7 sites across the state, as Ceasar mentioned, we have sites in eastern Kansas, western Kansas, central Kansas. And so I think we're hoping going forward to do similar events like this across our different farms in our soil health network so we can really reach this information to producers all over the state. Do you have any other thoughts about our longer-term goals? Yeah,
I think that like it's really try to measure and communicate the benefits of Regen Ag practice and how we measure them, how are the results, and really showing that they are attainable. Depending on your location, you can use one or use the other. But yeah, it's basically the future is like to really have this set of results, communicate them, and have like most of the Kansas community to be knowing about what we do and the benefits about what we did.
Again, talking about the future, is there anything that producers are specifically excited for looking ahead to research that you might be doing in years to come?
Yes. As I mentioned before, I think that like yield results are really important because at the end of the day, like producing more yields may mean like more profit, more like rentability of the farming operation. One thing that's interesting that we are developing too and we'll be showing in this field day is the connection between like soil health, crop health, and in some sort human health, because through the support of Kansas Corn that's funding this project, and our CSR, for example, we are also measuring grain quality in this research trial. So we are measuring, for example, if you take wheat under a conventional system and under a cover crop system, we are measuring if you have differences in nutrient density in these grains that may imply in maybe later on more nutritious food and even maybe premium prices for the farmers for having grains with better quality. So it's like a holistic approach, trying to understand not only one facet of sustainability, just not the soil, but also like trying to embrace soil, plant, human. I think that this is like a really specific goal that we are trying to still understand, but also like with the results that we have already communicate, like even if they are preliminary results.
Can I add one other? It reminded me that another component of the research that we anticipate to expand more on going into the future is just the economic side of it, really measuring what, from a budget perspective, can a farmer expect to see when implementing these practices, which I think obviously the bottom line is going to be important to a lot of producers as well.
I know you kind of tagged on there something else that you wanted to add, but besides the things that we've already discussed, is there anything else that producers should know about this field day or about the research that you guys have continued to do over the years?
Oh, yeah. Just thanking our sponsors for this project. As I mentioned, Kansas Corn have been supporting us like for 9 years already, so it's really crucial to this project. And our CSR is helping us and also sponsoring us for the grain nutrient analysis. We are going to have like the participation of some industry partners in the field day, for example, King Arthur and Arva.
If anyone else is interested in attending this field day, is there somewhere that they can go to find more information about it?
Yes, you can register, and at the registration page, it'll have all the information at ksura.short.gy/field day. And that'll have the schedule, the location. It's on Thursday, September 11th, if I hadn't already mentioned that. Food will be provided. We'll have coffee and donuts in the morning at registration, a barbecue lunch at lunchtime, so that's always a good thing. And we just ask if you could register as soon as possible, ideally, within 5 to 7 days before the field day is when we're going to try to get a head count for food. So the sooner we could get that in there, the better, because we want to make sure we have plenty of food for everybody.
Nick, Ceasar, thank you both for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, that was Kansas State University's Nick Detter, Extension Agronomy Assistant, and Ceasar Guareschi, PhD student, as they discussed the upcoming Regenerative Agriculture Field Day in Saline County, Kansas, on September 11th. If you're interested in registering for this event, I will be sure to link the resources in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we will have more for you up ahead. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking with K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond with this week's weather update. Chip, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, it's starting to feel a little bit like fall.
It is, and a little earlier than we would definitely expect when we look at the calendar. We have had very cool conditions across the state. We had some weather stations measure in the 40s over the last several days. We had 48 degrees in the Kansas River Valley. That tied, and even there were a couple low-hanging fruit, as I like to call them, short duration. They don't have a big climatological history. Records broken as well with this cooler air. And it's been, we started out definitely dry over the weekend and early week with the dry air in place, especially eastern part of the state. And so that allowed temperatures to fall into those 40 degrees, whereas areas where we had more moisture in the western part of the state, we didn't quite see temperatures get nearly that cool, but a real good first taste of fall.
What does this mean for drought?
Yeah, so cool conditions have been the result of several things. First, we've had a jet stream that's been out of the northwest that is allowing that cooler air to sink southward. We've also had a lot of moisture in place with it, because we've had an active monsoonal pattern in the southwestern United States. That's actually shifted further north and has now covered most of the Rocky Mountains from Canada to Mexico. That moisture has been drawn in by that northwest flow, and we see these complexes of thunderstorms traversing the plains. And most folks outside of northeast Kansas have seen a lot of rain this week. We look at 7-day totals for the last week, up to 3.5 inches in portions of Rush County and down towards Meade County and Clark County. A lot of moisture has fallen. And then just over the last 48 hours or so, we had another round of precipitation that went in southern part of the state and then hit the southern Flint Hills too. And again, areas south of Wichita saw almost 3 inches of rain. In the southern Flint Hills, same thing, 1 to 2 inches of rain. So a lot of moisture has fallen with this monsoonal moisture feed into the plains, and we combine it with the cooler temperatures. That's good for drought overall because, well, we're not evaporating a lot of moisture, and then we're putting it in the soil again and helping to store it up. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that northeast Kansas has missed a lot of the rain, and we're starting to actually see some drought development in that area. We had abnormally dry expand about a week ago in that region, and then they're 2-3 inches below normal now for the last 30 days just because they missed out on a lot of this precipitation.
Chip, what does the forecast look like?
Yeah, so everyone's asking when's the rain going to stop and when is it going to warm up? Well, temperatures are expected to stay below average for the foreseeable future, really, into early September and maybe potentially even into middle of September. We keep this northwest flow with this trough of low pressure that's kind of stuck over the eastern United States. The one change is that the monsoonal moisture is starting to be scoured out. We're starting to see stronger cold fronts this time of year through that jet stream, and they're starting to push that moisture southward. And I expect precipitation opportunities. We've got one more here on Sunday. But after that, things start to dry out, it looks like, with these frequent fronts and cooler than normal temperatures. And I think we'll be below average precipitation-wise. It's good for folks that want the corn and summer crops to dry out, but not necessarily good with the cooler temperatures because we're not evaporating that moisture out. And then we also need moisture in the ground to get wheat harvest going too. So all those things are in motion and in flux as we go into September, and it's a dynamic time. And hopefully we can kind of get a little bit of everything for everyone. We can dry the folks out in the west, central that have been pretty wet, and we can get some moisture in the east that is starting to really need it.
Chip, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Again, that was Kansas State University meteorologist Chip Redmond with this week's weather update and what we can expect to see in the forecast. Just a reminder for our listeners, we will not have a show on Monday due to the Labor Day holiday, but we will return with more for you on Tuesday.